several other journalists there tonight at the National Press Foundation. That awards dinner will shoot that for you. Now we're going to take you live to the floor of the U.S. Senate. Senators making their way back to the floor now.
Like Emmaus and Gettysburg. You know, we go from the banks of the Delaware all the way to the shores of Lake Erie. And in a state this big, of course, we have a wide range of very vital industries. We've got old industries that we've had for a long time and are still very important employers. Agriculture, coal and steel, and as many others. We're a big manufacturing state, manufacturing goods of all kinds. We have a huge service sector, especially in fields of education and medicine, finance and tourism, and many others. And we've got some relatively new and really very exciting industries in our Commonwealth that I'm very hopeful will lead to an acceleration in job growth soon. I'm thinking in particular of the natural gas in the Marcellus Shale. I'm thinking of the life sciences. All across the Commonwealth, especially in greater Philadelphia and greater Pittsburgh, as well as in points in between. The medical device sector and pharmaceutical industries are offering some of the most exciting opportunities for economic growth anywhere in the Commonwealth. So when I think about the diversity and the strengths of our Commonwealth, I am convinced that Pennsylvania's best days are ahead of us. That said, despite all of the underlying strengths and advantages that we have, we've got an economy that's struggling. We've got job creation that's far too slow. And as I said repeatedly throughout my campaign for the Senate seat, and as I've said since then, I think there are two vital priorities that we need to focus on first and foremost here in Washington. And the first is economic growth and the job creation that comes with it. And the second is restoring fiscal discipline to a government that's lost all sense of fiscal discipline. These two, of course, are closely related. We'll never have the kind of job growth that we need and that we deserve until we get our fiscal house in order. But I look at them as separate issues, and I think they should be at the top of our priority list. Let me also say this, Mr. President. I am absolutely convinced that we can have terrific economic growth, terrific job growth. We can have the prosperity that we've been looking for. In fact, it's actually inevitable if the federal government just follows the right policies, remembering first and foremost that prosperity comes from the private sector, doesn't come from government itself, but that government creates an environment in which the private sector can thrive and can create the jobs that we so badly need. I would argue, Mr. President, that the government does that really by doing just four things and doing them well. The first is to make sure we have a legal system that respects property rights, because the clear title and ownership and ability to use private property is the cornerstone of a free enterprise system. It requires, second, that the government establish sensible regulations that are not excessive, because that's excessive regulation, and frankly, we've seen a lot of excessive regulation recently. But too much regulation always has unintended consequences that curb our ability to create the jobs that we need. A third thing a government always needs to do is provide a stable currency, sound money, because debasing one's currency is the way to ruin, not the way to prosperity. And fourth, governments need to live within their means. They can't be spending too much money, and they can't have taxes at too high a level. It's so important that government spending remain limited and, frankly, much less than we have today for several reasons. One, of course, government spending is the political allocation of capital rather than the allocation of free people in a free economy, and the political allocation is always less efficient than that of men and women engaging in free enterprise. And secondly, the reason that too much spending is problematic is because it ultimately always has to be paid for with higher taxes. And higher taxes clearly impede economic growth and prevent job creation. They do that in many ways, but not the least of which is by diminishing the incentives to make investments, to take risks, to launch new enterprises, to hire new workers. I would argue, Mr. President, that of these four priorities, the government's not doing such a great job. And the failure is most egregious when it comes to the level of spending that has recently developed in this town. The recent surge in spending amounts to about a 25% increase in the size of the government virtually overnight. The government is now spending, the federal government alone, is now spending fully 25% of our entire economic output. And frankly, this huge surge in spending hasn't worked. Unemployment rate has stayed near to 10%. Our deficits are now over $1.5 trillion in just a single year. That's more than 10% of our entire economy. And of course, when you run annual deficits where you're spending more than you bring in, that shortfall is made up for with new borrowings. And so we've been adding to our debt at really what I think is an alarming pace. And I would argue that this mounting debt is already today costing us job growth. It's costing us jobs because it creates a tremendous uncertainty in our economic future when we're not on a sustainable fiscal path. And that uncertainty itself discourages entrepreneurs and job creators from doing the kind of things that we need. And the risks are very, very real. History is replete with examples of countries that have accumulated too much debt, and frankly, it never ends well. Very often it leads to very high rates of inflation. It can lead to much higher interest rates, which can have a crippling effect on job growth. It can even lead to financial disruptions, which can be very, very damaging, as we have recently seen. Now, with the recent acceleration in the size of our deficits and the increase in our debts, we are now rapidly closing in on the statutory limit to the amount of money that the federal government is permitted to borrow under law. That's an amount of over $14 trillion, but the truth is we are rapidly closing in on that limit, and we'll get there fairly soon. The administration has suggested that we ought to, here in Congress, we ought to vote to raise that limit with no conditions attached. I have to tell you, this I think is a very bad idea. This brings to mind the case of a family that is routinely living beyond their means. They're routinely spending more than their income and making up for the difference by running up the limit on their credit cards. When this family reaches the limit on all the credit cards they've got, who really thinks it's a good idea to just give them another credit card? I think most folks in Pennsylvania think it's probably time to re-examine the spending and look at the real problem that has gotten the family in this situation. I think that's where we are as a government. I think we need to really fundamentally re-examine the spending that we've been engaged in. Now, I will say clearly I think failure to raise the debt limit promptly upon reaching it is not optimal, and it would be very disruptive, and I hope that doesn't come to pass. But I happen to think the most irresponsible thing we could do is simply raise this debt limit and just run up even more debt without making any of the changes to the problems that got us into this fix. Specifically, what I think we need to do is have real cuts in spending now, not later, not at some distant hypothetical point in time in the future, but now. That's one. And second, I think we need real reforms in the spending process, reforms in the way that Congress goes about its business, because the process is part of what's gotten us here. My own view, I'd like to see a balanced budget amendment, one with real teeth, one that requires our books to be balanced, one that limits the total spending to a reasonable percentage of our economy, and one that makes it harder to raise taxes. I think that would be a very good development. But that'll take several years at best if we can get that implemented. Of course, all the states have to agree, and in the meantime, I would hope we could have statutory spending caps. In law, limits to how much the federal government can spend, and a mechanism that would redress the problem if, for some reason, we exceeded those limits. Now, as we've had this debate over whether or not we should attach these conditions to raising the debt limit, some have suggested that this is a very dangerous discussion to have because failure to immediately raise the debt limit, some have suggested that that amounts to a default on our Treasury securities, on the borrowings that we've already incurred. Fact is, that's just not true, and I think it's irresponsible to suggest that. The fact is, Mr. President, that the ongoing revenue from taxes that will be collected whether or not we immediately raise the debt limit, well, the ongoing revenue is more than 10 times all the money needed to stay current on our debt service. In fact, for the last 20 years, there have been 4 occasions when we've reached the debt limit without immediately raising it, and we never defaulted on our debt, and this country never will. So I don't think we should have a discussion about something that's not going to happen, but since the administration, some in the administration have raised the specter of a default, I've introduced legislation that would clearly take that risk off the table entirely. My bill is called the Full Faith and Credit Act, and it simply says that in the event that we reach the debt limit without having raised it, it instructs the Treasury to make sure that debt service is the top priority. This guarantees that we wouldn't default on our treasuries, we wouldn't create a financial crisis of any kind, and maybe more importantly, it would be, I think, a great reassurance to the millions of Americans who've lent this government their money, the millions of Americans who hold treasury bonds in their IRAs, their 401ks, their pension plans. You know, the retiree who lives in Allentown, Pennsylvania, who's lived modestly, saved money, and with their retirement savings has invested in the U.S. Treasury, I think those folks deserve the peace of mind of knowing that first priority is going to be to make sure that we honor the obligation to stay current on our debts. I want to take a moment to just thank Senator Vitter, because yesterday he came down to the floor and introduced my legislation as an amendment to the current patent reform bill. And I hope we'll be able to pass my amendment. I hope we'll soon get to a vote here on the Senate floor on this. And the real reason is I just really want to take off the table. I want to remove this false specter of a default on our debt so that we can have an honest debate over how we're going to get spending under control, what kind of spending cuts we're going to have right now, and what kind of reforms we're going to make to the process going forward. I just don't think we can kick this can down the road anymore. We've been doing that for a long time. And as I said earlier, it never ends well when governments continue taking on too much debt. Nobody here that I know wants to see a government shutdown. Nobody wants to see the disruption that would come from failing to raise the debt limit at some point. But nor can we proceed with business as usual. And all across Pennsylvania, I hear every day when I'm back home how important it is that this government learn to live within its means, as Pennsylvania businesses and families have done. Let me close by just saying I still remain absolutely convinced we can have a terrific economic recovery. We can have a booming economic growth and the tremendous job creation that goes with it. It's overdue, but it can still arrive if we just pass the kind of policies that create the right environment. So I'm convinced the 21st century will be another great American century, and Pennsylvania will be at the forefront. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The Republican leader.
Mr. President, I just want to extend my congratulations to the senator from Pennsylvania for his initial speech, including his comments about his important amendment, which is actually pending to the patent bill, which hopefully we'll have an opportunity to vote on here in the very near future. I yield the floor.
Senator from Tennessee. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander.
Mr. President,
Senator from Vermont.
I ask consent to call the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection, so ordered.
And, Mr. President, soon we're going to ask for a vote on the Leahy, Grassley, Kyle manager's amendment. We have, it resolves a number of issues in the bill, including fee diversion and business method, patents, damages, venue issues. And Senators Coburn, Schumer, Bennett, Whitehouse, Coons, others worked with us to reach that. And I'd like to vote on that and then go to the amendment offered yesterday by Senator Bennett on satellite patent offices with a modification. The modified amendment offered by Senator Kirk and Senator Pryor on ombudsman. And if we can do that, we can get much of this finished. But while I'm waiting for the, and just so everybody will know, I am going to ask for vote on that very soon, but I'm waiting for the ranking member to come back so I see the distinguished senior senator from Minnesota on the floor, and I would yield to her.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Minnesota is recognized.
First, I'd like to commend Chairman Leahy and the entire Judiciary Committee for the work on this bill, but the chairman has stuck it through with a bill that had so many ups and downs in different versions, and we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him. Mr. President, I rise today to speak in support of the America Invents Act, a bill to overhaul our patent system, which plays such a critical role in our economy. It is one of the main reasons America has been able to maintain its competitive edge. The Commerce Department estimates that up to 75% of the economic growth in our nation since World War II is due to technological innovation. Innovation made possible by a patent system that protects the rights to that innovation. I have seen the importance and success of the patent system firsthand in my home state of Minnesota, which has brought the world everything, Mr. President, from the pacemaker to the Post-it note. In Minnesota, we know how important the patent system is to our economy. We rank 6th in the nation in patents per capita and have the second highest number of medical device patents over just the last 5 years. Companies like 3M, Ecolab, and Medtronic are well-known leaders in innovation. But Minnesota also supports innovative small businesses like NVE Corporation and Arizant Healthcare. We are, in fact, Mr. President, now first per capita for Fortune 500 companies in our state, and that is in large part because of innovation. So many of these companies started small. They invented products. They got their patents. The patents were protected. People weren't copying the products. They were able to grow and produce jobs in our country. Having a patent system that works for small business is particularly critical to creating jobs here in America. But our patent laws haven't had a major update since 1952. The system is outdated and has become a burden to our innovators and entrepreneurs. Because of these outdated laws, the Patent and Trademark Office faces a backlog of over 700,000 patent applications and too often issues low-quality patents. One of these 700,000 patents may be the next implantable pacemaker or a new therapy for fighting cancer, but it just sits in that backlog. Our current patent system also seems stacked against small entrepreneurs. I've spoken to small business owners and entrepreneurs across our state who are concerned with the high cost and uncertainty of protecting their inventions. For example, under the current system, when 2 patents are filed around the same time for the same invention, the applicants must go through an arduous and expensive process called an interference to determine which applicant will be awarded the patent. Small inventors rarely, if ever, win interference proceedings because the rules for interferences are often stacked in favor of companies with deep pockets. This needs to change. Our current patent system also ignores the realities of the information age we live in. In 1952, back when this patent bill came about, the world wasn't as interconnected as it is today. There was no Internet. People didn't share information like they do in this modern age. They had things called party telephone lines. In 1952, most publicly available information about technology could be found in either patents or scientific publications. So patent examiners only had to look to a few sources to determine if the technology described in a patent application was both novel and not obvious. Today, as we all know, there is a vast amount of information readily available everywhere you look. It is unrealistic to believe that a patent examiner would know all of the places to look for this information, and even if the examiner knew where to look, it is unlikely he or she would have the time to search all of these nooks and crannies. The people that know where to look are the other scientists and innovators that also work in the field. But current law does not allow participation by third parties in the patent application process, despite the fact that third parties are often in the best position to challenge a patent application. Without the benefit of this outside expertise, an examiner might grant a patent for technology that simply isn't true. It's simply not an actual invention. And these low-quality patents clog up the system and hinder true innovation. Our nation can't afford to slow innovation anymore. While China is investing billions in its medical technology sector, we're still bickering about regulations. While India encourages invention and entrepreneurship, we're still giving our innovators the runaround, playing a game of red light, green light with the R&D tax credit. The truth is that America can no longer afford to be a country that churns money and shuffles papers, a country that consumes, imports, and spends its way to huge trade deficits. What we need to be now is a nation that makes things again, that invents stuff, that exports to the world. A country where you can walk into any store on any street in any neighborhood, purchase the best good, and you turn it over and it says, "Made in the USA." In the words of New York Times columnist and Minnesota native Tom Friedman, we need to be focusing on nation building in our own nation. Well, as innovators and entrepreneurs, our country needs to spawn more of them. The America Invents Act would do just that. First, the America Invents Act increases the speed and certainty of the patent application process by transitioning our patent system from a first-to-invent system to a first-inventor-to-file system. This change to a first-inventor-to-file system will increase predictability by creating brighter lines to guide patent applicants and the Patent Office examiners. By simply using the file date of an application to determine the true inventor, the bill increases the speed of the patent application process while also rewarding novel, cutting-edge innovations. To help guide investors and inventors, this bill allows them to search the public record to discover with more certainty whether their idea is patentable, helping eliminate duplication and streamlining the system. At the same time, the bill still provides a safe harbor of a year for inventors to go out and market their inventions before having to file for their patent. This grace period is one of the reasons our nation's top research universities, like the University of Minnesota, support this bill. The grace period protects professors who discuss their inventions with colleagues or publish them in journals before filing their patent application. The grace period will encourage cross-pollination of ideas and eliminate concerns about discussing inventions with others before a patent application is actually filed. Moreover, this legislation helps to ensure that only true inventions receive protection under our laws. By allowing third parties to provide information to the patent examiner, the America Invents Act helps bridge the information gap between the patent application and existing knowledge. The legislation also provides a modernized, streamlined mechanism for third parties that want to challenge recently issued low-quality patents that should never have been issued in the first place. Eliminating these potentially trivial patents will help the entire patent system by improving certainty for both users and inventors. The legislation will also improve the patent system by granting the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office the authority to set and adjust its own fees. Allowing the office to set its own fees will give it the resources to reduce the current backlog and devote greater resources to each patent that is reviewed to ensure higher quality patents. The fee-setting authority is why IBM, one of the most innovative companies around, and by the way, the host of the Jeopardy-winning Watson, well, the IBM facility there that actually developed Watson was in Rochester, Minnesota. And in fact, the IBM, which has its facilities in Rochester and Twin Cities, as well as many, many places in this country, was granted a record 5,896 patents in the year 2010. IBM supports this bill. It allows the Patents Office to set its own fees and run itself like a business, and that's good for both companies like IBM as well as small entrepreneurs. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, as chair of the Subcommittee on Competitiveness, Innovation, and Export Promotion, I've been focused on ways to promote innovation and growth in the 21st century. Stakeholders from across the spectrum agree. This bill is a necessary step to ensure that the United States remains a world leader in developing innovative products that bring prosperity and happiness to those in our country. Globalization and technical advancements have changed our economy. This legislation will ensure that our patent system truly rewards innovation in the 21st century. Our patent system has to be as sophisticated as those that are inventing these products and also as those who at times are trying to steal their ideas. That's what this is about. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.
President.
Senator from Vermont.
President, we have the Leahy Grassley Manager's amendment at the desk. I have a modification to it, and I ask that the amendment be so modified.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, we are prepared to go to a roll call vote on this right now, but I do not see the ranking member. As a courtesy, I'm willing to wait a few more minutes for him to get back here before calling for the vote, so I will...
It was a hard decision, but once we made it, I didn't...
Coming. While we're waiting for my friend, the distinguished Republican leader in this bill, I would note that what we're talking about is bipartisan legislation supported by both business and labor. People ask whether Congress can work together and whether, with all the problems facing America, whether Republicans and Democrats can come together just to face problems of America, to get work done, to make things work, make things, do things that could make America stronger and more competitive in the world. This is a bill that does that. That is why we have a broad spectrum of co-sponsors in both parties across the political spectrum. It enables us to actually do something. We have a decades-old patent system, which may have made sense back in the time when you had patents that might not be superseded by a new invention for years. Now they can be superseded the day they come in. It's why we have 750,000 patents waiting to be processed. It's also why countries like China and others begin to surpass us in their innovation, because we've been slow to catch up. We're in a situation where we don't We're unable to compete. The rest of the industrialized nation, their patent laws are ahead of ours. Ours is behind them. So this is a case where we have a chance to catch up in America. We do it without adding a cent to the deficit, but we also create jobs, as every major manufacturer in this country and inventor has said, this is where we will create jobs. Now, I look at it, of course, from the point of view that my little state of Vermont, on a per capita basis, we have more patents than any other state in the Union. We actually have more patents in some states larger than ours. The distinguished presiding officer comes from a state that has spent a great deal of time and effort in innovation and is one of the leaders in the number of patents, especially in the high-tech area in the country. But the patents don't help us compete unless we're able to move with them. So, listen, we in Vermont have had a long history of innovation and invention. The first ever patent in the United States was signed by George Washington after being cleared by Thomas Jefferson and granted to a Vermonter. And, Mr. President, I would suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. the seance.